Families across this country gather together at a kitchen table and they work on a budget. Then once a month, they try to balance their checkbook. Making a budget, balancing a checkbook, Congress seems to be incapable of doing either of these. And that's why today, this country faces a national debt of over $36 trillion. $36 trillion. I believe that debt is the greatest threat we have to our long-term national security and to the future of America in so many ways. So first we need to look, how did we get here? How did we get to $36 trillion of national debt? And I think many of us feel it's been driven by federal waste, by fraud, and gross mismanagement. Now, last year's federal deficit, I want you to think about this. We're talking about the deficit now. We have a national debt, $36 trillion, and we have a deficit each year. So this last fiscal year, the federal government took in $5 trillion, but we spent $7 trillion. Let me say it again. We took in $5 trillion, but we managed to spend $7 trillion. That's pretty simple math for a deficit of some $2 trillion. Now, this last year, we eclipsed a new benchmark. The federal government spent more on interest alone payments on the debt than it did on funding the national defense or Medicare. Let me say it again. We spent more on making an interest payment than we did on national defense or Medicare. And no matter what your priorities are, whether it's schools, roads, and bridges, or maybe you think we need more military, when we're spending $1 trillion a year as a nation on interest, lots of things are going to go unaccomplished. Now, the American people have clearly spoken. 77 million people elected Donald J. Trump to be the president. And with them, his priorities that we deal with the bureaucratic inefficiencies, overregulation, and a government that prioritizes beltway politics over the heartland, all without any transparency or accountability. So what am I talking about? The Pentagon can account for $824 billion. Improper federal payments in 2023 were $236 billion. Pandemic relief loss to fraud and abuse was $200 billion. There's one, that right there together, just those three items alone, $1.2 trillion of waste, fraud, and mismanagement. Now, we take a peek again at 2023, the Biden-Harris administration's open border policies. Think about the cost of taking on these 10 million, maybe more, illegal immigrants, at least $150 billion. Our Department of Education spent over $1 billion promoting DEI initiatives in schools. Let me say it again, $1 billion promoting DEI initiatives in schools, but our kids can't read and write and do math. Meanwhile, the U.S. government adds $6 billion of debt daily. So we're $6 billion. By the time you wake up in the morning, you go to bed, you wake up the next day, we've added another $6 billion of debt. And the total debt now, as I said earlier, over $36 trillion. And again, making an interest payment of $1 trillion each year. So I think this is where DOGE comes in. What can DOGE do here? I'm proud to be one of the founding members, appreciate Senator Ernst's leadership on this. And I'm committed to addressing this crisis and reform the federal government to operate with the efficiency and accountability that Americans deserve. Now, to address the spending crisis, we need a plan, we need accountability. We have some simple reforms that we can make on day one that slash the spending and disrupt the accounted for blank check spending that we're seeing out of this federal government. So here's just a few examples, and I've been sharing with these people that are coming into this new administration. If this was a business, the first thing I would do, and I saw that we had spent $2 trillion more than we took in, the first thing I would do is I would freeze federal employees. I would not hire any more federal employees. Next, I would require all federal employees to return to their office to work. Maybe only 1 out of 10, maybe 2 out of 10 federal employees in D.C. are actually back in office working. Next, I would decentralize the federal government. There's many functions of the federal government that could be formed better, less costly, if we would move them out of this environment. And then next, I would implement term limits for political appointees as well as long-term employees as well. I think there's opportunities for agency consolidation. We can modernize the IT system. We're spending 80% of $100 billion annually on an outdated IT system here at the federal government. The opportunities that we would save financially with regulatory reform are infinite. We could roll back energy mandates, EPA limits, methane emission rules. We could expand federal land leasing for oil and gas production. Next, I would talk about cutting subsidy waste, getting rid of some of the tax credits. So for instance, taxpayer-funded electric vehicle subsidies could be done away with. Why in the world are we giving tax credits to foreign entities? So we have foreign countries, foreign entities that are benefiting from some of these tax credits as well. Our grant oversight is just pitiful. Spending money, the NGO research grants, we don't know who's spending it and where it's going. And that we're funding billions of dollars on gain-of-function research, teaching China how to develop weapons against Americans. The biodefense program for NIAID is spending over $2 billion annually, again, to help communist China develop bioweapons against Americans. We need more research accountability. There's opportunities for education reform. And then in the taxation and IRS reform, we could rescind the $80 billion for IRS funding under the IRA Act as well. And certainly simplifying tax laws would be a great opportunities as well. And that's just a few. That is just a handful of the ideas that we have passed on to DOGE and to President Trump's team, and we look forward to working with them. I think it's enough said. Enough is enough. It's time for federal agencies and unelected bureaucrats to remember that we, the people, sign their checks, and that DOGE is absolutely committed to restoring accountability and putting the federal government back on the path to serving the American people. These solutions will give Beltway bureaucrats the fits. It'll give them heartburn, but these reforms will finally put the federal government on notice and on a path to start working like a business. And I'll close with this. Look, DOGE can help us identify and prioritize waste. So DOGE is going to help us identify and prioritize the waste, the fraud, the mismanagement. But it's up to Congress to put their gloves on, to roll up their sleeves, and get the work done. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield back.
Senator Marshall.
Thank you, Chairman, Ranking Member. Ms. Rollins, welcome.
Thank you.
Just want to know if you agree with me that whole milk is the most nutritious drink known to humankind and belongs in our school lunches.
Senator, I don't know that you have met my mom yet, but this is all we had in our refrigerator growing up. Not anything else, just whole milk. She is absolutely never going to let us forget this, the fact that this is coming up. But yes, this hits home to me very, very quickly. It brings back a lot of memories.
So, Ms. Rollins, like many of us on this committee, you have a love, a passion for rural America, for agriculture. Tell us where that comes from and why this job is important to American agriculture and rural America, just from your heart.
Senator, thank you. The fact that I'm sitting here today, that I am in the United States Capitol, that I'm sitting in front of this committee, that I am serving at the appointment of the President of the United States as one of his potential cabinet members, but yet I grew up in a town of 1,200 with a single mom, with two little sisters, went to Texas A&M on an agriculture scholarship because my love, but also we needed the money. That Future Farmers of America is the organization that set my path so many years ago. I am fighting for the next Brooke, who is growing up in a little bitty town with a single mom, that her weekends are spent on horses and raising cattle and barrel racing and at Friday night football, at least in the South, and making sure that those communities continue to raise and provide thriving and incredible opportunities for the next generation of leaders so that this country can continue in the next 250 years to do what we've done in the last 250, and that is to create and govern under our founders' vision of the greatest country in the history of the world. And this work and this committee and this moment in time is the backbone to all of that.
Yeah, Ms. Rollins, reminds me of a song that growing up a Kansas farm boys mostly having fun. And I think that's what you're describing. It was
That's
mostly
right.
having, it was a simpler time. You pointed out earlier, 90% of rural America supported President Trump in the election, over 90%. Now, every time I see the president, the first thing he asks me is, Roger, how are your farmers and ranchers doing in Kansas? Can you just share with this committee President Trump's compassion for farmers and ranchers? Do you have similar conversations with him as well?
Yes. Senator, one of the illuminating moments of my time with him in the last administration. And it was, as you can imagine, an adventure beyond any imagination to be next to President Trump for 3 years and then to continue to work with him after he left the White House to build the America First Policy Institute and continue the policies for the next 100 years, not just for this moment in time. But I, in the last West Wing, I believe I'm speaking correctly, was the only person with an agriculture background. And that wasn't widely known because I was managing the entire portfolio. And but any time in any senior staff meetings or any time we were in the Oval Office and these issues would come up, he would always point to me and say, where are we on that? And it was so clear to me that that is where his heart is. I'll never forget a cabinet meeting where we were having a discussion about some big corporate entity who had asked for a very large sum in the multis of billions of dollars for a project. And that same week he had been asked for that project, he'd also visited some farmers in Georgia. And I'll never forget, I was sitting behind him because I was not part of the cabinet, I was part of the senior staff. And I'll never forget, I don't think the media was in there, but he looked at the entire cabinet and then turned, over his shoulder and looked at us who were sitting behind him as his senior team. And he said, I'm not here for those guys who are asking for billions of dollars for their new project and their market value is many, many billions and billions more. I'm here for those farmers. I am here for those men and women that I met in Georgia yesterday who are hurting but never complain, never miss a beat, never stop doing what they're called to do, which is to produce for the families across America and across the world. That is who I am here, and we all, pointing to the cabinet and the staff, are here to serve. I think that was in maybe year 2 of the 4, and I've never forgotten it. And when he called me about this job, we talked about that again.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Rollins. So obviously, agriculture, rural America is important to you. It's important to the president. Would you just speak for a moment how important biofuels are to the farmers, to ranchers who benefit from some of the substrates coming out of that process and to rural America as well, and specifically how 45Z might impact rural America?
I think that everyone knows where the president is on this, and he often jokes that there were a lot of meetings. I think a lot of you were in. Senator Grassley, I know you were in many of those in the last White House, making sure that the president fully understood the importance of exactly what you're talking about, Senator, on biofuels and especially to our farmers. I believe that in the last 48 hours, one of his executive orders on energy actually included a mention of biofuels. And also, my role, if confirmed, is to defend all of American agriculture. So I believe, Senator, that you and others who hail from these states where this is a driver for your farmers and your ranchers and your economy should feel very confident that you have a friend and a defender in this current administration to make sure this continues. 45Z, obviously, my friend Scott Bessent, if confirmed over at Treasury, will be working on that. That's in his purview, but I will ensure that he has the data and the voices and the opinions around him to make the right decision.
Yeah, just one more quick comment on the 45Z is that certainly what we don't want is China to benefit from it.
Correct.
Which is happening right now. We can go into that in more detail later as well. And by the way, I was just sitting here thinking, I remember President Trump's the first primary back in 2016 in Iowa. I believe he came out, was the candidate that came out in favor of biofuels as well, as I recall.
That's right.
Let's finish up on the regulatory environment. Boy, I'm not sure if anything's a bigger concern to the American farmer right now than the regulatory environment. And the 2 hot button issues have been WOTUS, Waters of the U.S., and the Endangered Species Act. Can you tell us what your involvement was in rolling back that WOTUS regulation with the previous administration? And that, I think, is a good example going forward what will be happening.
I will, and I appreciate that so much because I do have extensive experience in many of these regulatory programs that in the last administration we worked to make roll back, but also align better for the needs of our ag communities and ensure that the Waters of the United States rule did not put more farmers out of business. Same with the Endangered Species Act. I know that that's also a big issue in our forestry lane as well. So I really encourage and look forward, and my policy heart is very happy at the opportunity to make those better, to understand the harm and follow the data on it, and really work with all of you to try to solve for that in the next 4 years.
Senator Schiff. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And at the outset, I want to tell you how very grateful I am to serve on this committee. California has not had a senator on the Agriculture Committee for over 30 years.
As we conclude the hearing. With that, Senator Marshall.
Thank you, Chairman. Obesity, diabetes, heart disease. Obesity, diabetes, heart disease account for probably 80% of health challenges in America. You know how many times I heard my friends across the aisle mention any three of those? I don't know if we've lost the forest for the trees here. Vaccine is a critical issue. I understand that. I don't see how Mr. Kennedy's position could be any more clear that he's going to support the vaccines, he's going to support the science and empowerment to parents and their doctors to make these choices. 60% of Americans have a chronic disease, that there's an epidemic of chronic diseases across the country. And this Make America Healthy Again movement is palpable to me. It started on the campaign trail in 2020 when moms I'd never met, that never involved in the political process, came up to me and said, look, I want to make these choices about my children with my doctor, not the federal government. That it's a very real thing. Moms, dads, grandparents across the country grab me and say, look, why do 20% of our children now, why are they on a prescription drug? So, Mr. Kennedy, what is your prescription to help make America healthy again? What's your vision? What does that look like to you?
Thank you, Senator Marshall. We're having epidemics of all these chronic illnesses, autoimmune diseases, neurological diseases, allergic diseases, obesity. When my uncle was president, 3% of Americans were obese. Today, 74% of Americans are obese or overweight. No other country has anything like this. In Japan, the obesity rate is still 3%. And epidemics are not caused by genes. Genes may provide the vulnerability, but you need an environmental toxin. Something is poisoning the American people. And we know that the primary culprits are changing food supply, the switch to highly chemical intensive processed foods. We have 10,000 ingredients in our country, in our foods. The Europeans have only 400. If you buy McDonald's French fries in our country, there's 11 ingredients, my understanding. In Europe, there's only 3. If you buy Fruit Loops in our country, they're loaded with food dyes, with yellow dye, red dye, blue dye, and many other ingredients. The same company makes the same product with different ingredients for Canada and Europe. And at age, we don't have good science on all these things. And that is deliberate. That's a deliberate choice not to study the things that are truly making us sick, that are not only contributing to chronic disease, but to mortalities from infectious disease. We need to get a handle on this, because if we don't, it's an existential threat. Our country is not going to be destroyed because we get the marginal tax rate wrong, or because we get one of these culture war issues that we've been talking about today wrong. It's going to be destroyed if we continue down this trajectory of chronic disease. We need to fix our food supply, and that's the number one.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Certainly, I share your concern with ultra-processed foods. On the other end of this food chain are my farmers and ranchers back home. Would you just take a second and share your compassion, how you feel about farmers and ranchers, that they respond to the market? They don't dictate the market. They grow what the market is wanting them to grow.
And Senator Hawley told me the other day that his brother-in-laws are all farmers. And he said 4 out of every 5 of his brother-in-laws has Parkinson's disease. And that kind of cluster we're seeing across farm country of cancers, autoimmune diseases, obesity, et cetera. And we can now not export American food to Europe because the Europeans won't take our food. That's not good for farmers. We're also destroying our soil because some of the chemicals that farmers use destroy the microbiome, and that causes the erosion of the soil. You can't get water infiltration. Water pools up and it washes the soil off. Agronomists now estimate that we only have, if we continue doing these processes, only 60 harvests left before our soil is gone. Farmers are using seeds and chemicals that are, over the long term, are costing them and us. And what we need to do is we need to support the farmers. We need the farmers as partners if we're going to make them work. And I don't want a single farmer to go out of business under our watch. I don't regulate farms. If I'm privileged to be confirmed, I'm not regulating farms. That's under USDA. But I want to partner with all of my decisions with USDA and with the farm community to make sure that we don't lose more farmers in this country, but that we also transition. We offer and incentivize transitions to regenerative agriculture, to no-till agriculture, and to less chemically intensive. And by the way, I've also met with the chemical industry and the fertilizer and herbicide companies, and they want to do the same thing. Oh, and I think we're on the trajectory to do that, and we need to incentivize initiatives to accelerate that trajectory.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, the great news is that my farmers in Kansas are selling products to Europe, that today's regenerative practices, soil health, all those things are priorities for Kansas farmers. Many of us are doing many of those things already. We just need it to be more widespread. If I could just wrap up my remarks, though, is that, again, going back to the big picture here, 60% of Americans have a chronic disease. Mr. Kennedy, I believe for such a time as this that you're not just one of 300 million people. I think that you are the person to lead HHS to make America healthy again, that God has a divine purpose for you, and I look forward to your confirmation and working with you to make America healthy again.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Senator Warnock.
Thank you so much, Chairman Crapo.
Out of order, we're going to go to Senator Marshall. He would like to be able to view the press conference regarding the tragedy on the plane from Wichita. Senator Marshall.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Kennedy, for your kind words this morning, for your caring text last night, and I'm grateful for all my colleagues, most everybody reaching out to us, and it's certainly it's a tough day for Kansans and many others who lost loved ones, and we will look forward meeting with the president later today and those loved ones, and just want everyone back home to know that we're wrapping our arms around them, that we're mourning with them, and we'll get through this together. So thank you. Mr. Kennedy, take a second and just describe why fighting chronic disease is so important to you. Who are we fighting for? What is your role as HHS Secretary, and is there anything that's a bigger priority to you than this as you go into this role?
Thank you, Senator. When I was a 10-year-old boy, my uncle was in the White House. The chronic disease among American children was 2%. Today it's 66%. The cost of chronic disease to our country when my uncle was president was zero. There were not even treatments for chronic disease at that time. Today, the cost is $4.45 trillion. It is bankrupting our country. 77% of American kids can't qualify for military service. 38% of teens, according to NIH's last report, which was 3 weeks ago, 38% are diabetic or pre-diabetic. When my uncle was president, the typical pediatrician would 1 or 2 cases of diabetes in his lifetime, juvenile diabetes. Today, it's more than a third of the kids who walk through his door or her door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. Autism rates have gone from 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 1,500 to 1 in 10,000, depending on what study you look at. In my generation, as a 70-year-old man today, in our children, it's 1 in 34. The explosion, I had 11 siblings. I had dozens of first cousins.
Mr. Kennedy, I'm sorry. So, who are we? What's your role as HHS secretary to fight that disease?
There's never been an HHS secretary who came in to do this. It was all about the typical partisan debate about how we allocate the cost, whether insurers pay it or whether hospitals, providers, or families pay it. And the costs continue to rise. All the things we're debating on, our kids are getting sicker and sicker.
Yeah, just to quote you from yesterday, it's like we're moving the chairs on the Titanic.
Yeah, and the ship is sinking, and nobody's paying attention to it. And yesterday, I got question after question from the Democrats about measles. In 1963, the year before the measles epidemic, or the measles vaccine was introduced, 500 American kids died from measles, almost all of them extremely poor and malnourished. We have 252 million Americans who are suffering from chronic disease, and none of them mentioned diabetes. They didn't mention heart disease. They didn't mention cancers yesterday. We need to refocus if we're going to save our country. This is existential. Our country's not going to be destroyed because we get the marginal tax rate wrong.
Right.
It is going to be destroyed if we get this issue wrong. And I am in a unique position to be able to stop this epidemic.
Mr. Kennedy, I want to just contribute as one of the three physicians on here, and even as I listen to my friends across the aisle, my conclusion is that we have to guard the physician-patient relationship and give those parents of these kids the information. All three of us are going to disagree on exactly who should and shouldn't get a particular vaccine. We all recognize the incredible successes of different vaccines as well, but we have to give the American public the best information, non-biased information, and I'd love to get you to respond to that, but I have an important question for folks back home. And this will be my last question. I've never seen a person whose words, written and spoken, have been so misattributed, exaggerated, sensationalized, and taken out of context. Will you just speak to my farmers and ranchers back home and tell me about your, where do they fit in this role of MAHA and how we're going to work with them and just your compassion towards these farmers and ranchers?
Yeah, I mean, MAHA will not succeed without the cooperation and partnership of agricultural producers, of farmers and ranchers across this country. I was a 4-H kid. I grew up working on ranches. And I've worked for years representing farmers in various forms of litigation. Thomas Jefferson said that American democracy is rooted in tens of thousands of independent freeholds owned by farmers. We are losing farmers today, and we can't afford to lose a single farmer. And on my watch, I do not want to lose a single farmer. We have to offer farmers an off-ramp from chemically intensive agriculture, which they don't want to do, which even the chemical industry is ready to change, so that they can grow crops that they can sell in Europe. They can grow crops. Senator Hawley told me during our meeting that 4 out of his 5 of his brother-in-laws have Parkinson's. There's illness all over the farm community, and it's undoubtedly related to the intensity of chemical pesticides.
Mr. Kennedy.
We need to reduce that, but I'm not going to do anything coerce the farmer. President Trump was the best president in modern American history for the American farmer. The first one to see farm prices go up. He has instructed me to take care of the farmers and make sure they're full partners.
Thank you.
Senator Marshall.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. I guess I'm it today. So I think, first of all, it's great to, once again, that both sides of this dais share many of the same goals. I heard my colleagues say that they want an aggressive trade agenda to open up more free markets, so that's exciting to hear. And I would add with that, I assume they also want them to have fair and reciprocal trade agreements as well. So we're assuming that we share the same goal. Under President Trump, he gave us USMCA, he gave us South Korea, an improved Japanese trade agreement so important to American beef, and China Phase 1. Mr. Greer, what trade agreements were accomplished under Joe Biden?
Senator, I'm not aware of any.
Okay, I want to compare and contrast a little bit here more. Let's talk about Mexico. I think it's one of the simpler ones to understand. Again, thanks to President Trump's USMCA trade agreement, Mexico and Canada supplanted China as a #1 trade partner for Kansas agriculture, many of our materials as well. But under Joe Biden, Mexico undermined American farms, he harmed commerce, and he bullied U.S. companies. He shut down the GMO corn exports, forcing a huge dispute. Mexico hampered U.S. energy production under Joe Biden, and Mexico seized a U.S. mining company's operation near Cozumel. What can you do, or what can we do to reverse this behavior?
Well, Senator, before I answer that, I just have to point out that I do have one child that was born in Kansas. So
That's great to hear.
So-
and maybe had something to do with your time in the Air Force.
that's exactly right.
Well, you're an honorary Kansan. You can wear your Chiefs jersey. You can wear a Jayhawk jersey. Any of those things are applicable. Which one is it?
Well, I have
Right there.
it's
Okay.
Sonora, and I have a Wichita State Shockers T-shirt that I
There
wear
we go.
occasionally. So with respect to your question, any trade agreement we have is only as valuable as the enforcement behind it.
Yeah.
And so my view is all these issues you talked about with Mexico, whether it be energy or corn, et cetera, we need to enforce that. I know that there's a case that was done on the corn issue. I'm going to enforce that. I know that there were consultations open on energy, and we're going to bring that up with the Mexicans as well. It's important. Listen, good fences make good neighbors. If we want to have good ongoing trade relations with folks, we have to hold them accountable.
That's right. Right. Let's talk about biofuels for a second. I've never seen such an uneven playing field for American biofuels. The U.S. is subject to 18% tariffs going into Brazil with biofuels, yet Brazil enjoys a virtually free access to the U.S. And in many cases, thanks to some scientific voodoo, they're actually giving Brazil a preference over American biofuels as well. The EU continues to be protectionist against U.S. ethanol. Chinese used cooking oil exports. You're familiar with how they're abusing that. You would think that if we're going to give tax credits, we would make sure they're not going to benefit foreign entities, especially those who wish to harm us. What can you do to help the biofuels industry and try to level that playing field?
Well, Senator, this is the specific kind of unfairness that drives me crazy, and it's not just me. The president himself, he sees these kinds of unfairnesses and the unlevel playing field, and it's so obvious, it's so blatant, and it's gone on for so long. Again, in the first instance, you can certainly go to somebody like the Brazilians and say you need to fix this, but it has to be followed up with or else, right? I mean, that's a little crude, but we need to have leverage, and if we need to gain leverage by taking investigatory actions or other actions, we'll do that. It'd be much better to do this on a negotiating basis. But we'll do whatever we need to do to try to fix this situation.
Great. Let's talk about China for a second. There's so many more things than just trade barriers or tariff barriers with them. There's many, many non-tariff barriers. I'm sure people have highlighted them when I was gone here. They're stealing seed genetics from us. They're blocking import and feed additive technologies and beef. They're blocking chicken exports from 42 states because of HPAI. They've committed to substantial ethanol purchase but never followed through. And I could go on. In contrast to the Biden administration, how can we build on President Trump's success under phase one with China?
Well, we need to start by reviewing it and actually assessing whether or not the Chinese have complied with it or to what degree. And in fact, the president has already directed the Office of the USTR to do this. And if you go to their website, there's like an announcement that says that they're in train doing this. So I think in the first instance, you have to have a very clear assessment because we don't just want to pound our fist and have rhetoric. We want to be able to very clearly see where they did or did not comply. And then from there, you move to dispute settlement and you move to enforcement if you need to. And again, hopefully this is an area where countries will understand the unfairness and change because they know that President Trump is serious about this, that I'm serious about this. And if they don't, then you move to that last part of enforcement.
Great, great. If I could just finish with this, as you all know, we have an almost $1 trillion trade deficit in this country, and as well as national security issues. And I appreciate President Trump, this drug war that we're having with Mexico and Canada and China over the fentanyl precursors especially. I greatly appreciate him prioritizing the security of our families, and if he has to use tariffs for that, I understand. I also believe, though, these tariffs will bring jobs back to America as well, and that's another way that we can use this. You know, one thing I would dispute, and we would disagree with this with my friends across the aisle, when they say that American consumers will pay for these tariffs. You know, under President Trump, he used tariffs, but we saw minimal inflation. So at the end of the day, those tariffs were not passed on to America in the big picture. I'm sure you cannot find isolationists that you could do that, but to me, the big picture is, for one reason or another, those tariffs were used properly, and we were able to not pass that on to American consumers. Mr. Greer, is there a way to do that going forward as well, to effectively use these tariffs as a weapon, as a tool?
Yes, I agree 100% with that. What we learned from the first term is that President Trump and his economic team is very good at managing the economy, and we saw real median household income go up by $7,000 over 3 years before the pandemic hit. And this was at a time when we were imposing tariffs in a way we hadn't done in many years. And when we look at inflation under the Biden administration, that happened in 2022, it wasn't about tariffs. It was about healthcare and housing and food, things we don't import from China, right? So we know that we can manage this. We know we have a strong economic team. And if I'm confirmed, I expect to be able to take strong trade action while helping ensure that the economy is growing for average Americans.
Thank you so much, Mr. Greer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member. Thank you. Good morning, Ms. McMahon. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you, too.
You bet. Ms. McMahon, when I speak to youth, I typically talk about the 3 pillars of my life: faith, family, and education. And thanks to a strong faith, a loving family, and the public educators in my life, I was a first-generation college kid who got to live my American dream and become a physician and practice in rural medicine. So this education thing is so important to all of us on both sides of the dais. I raised 4 kids in public schools. And unfortunately, I've seen the deterioration of the education system. And again, we have the most incredible teachers and coaches back home, and I'm grateful for all of them. But I think we'd all agree we're going the wrong direction. Just really big picture, what would be your top priorities? How do we change the ship's direction?
Well, certainly the president has given a very clear directive that he would like to look in totality at the Department of Education and believes that the bureaucracy of it should be closed, that we should return education to our states, that the best education is that closest to the kids, and that we should work with our local schools, with our superintendents, with our parents, to make sure that the education that our students are getting are the ones that is best for them. It's not one-size-fits-all education policy throughout the country. Governors have taken great strides in implementing school choice, making sure that schools have the funding that they need. And we've seen public education in those states actually improve. There have been studies to show that. And so I'm very hopeful that we will get back to the basics of education so that our children can read when they leave 3rd grade, and that 8th grade students can do math and reading proficiency. Today, only 1/3 of high school students graduating can read proficiently. That means 2/3 can't. We are failing our students, our Department of Education, and what we are doing today is not working, and we need to change it.
Thank you. Ms. McMahon, should biological boys, be allowed to compete against girls in sports?
I do not believe that biological boys should be able to compete against girls in sports. And I think now that they certainly not only have the people spoken, because that was something that President Trump ran very hard on, but also the court has spoken.
Ms. McMahon, I feel like there's that anti-Semitism has become endemic in our universities. Would you be open to some type of an anti-Semitism commission to evaluate the progress of the universities on this issue?
Yes, I would, and I'd look forward to perhaps working with you or other members of the committee on such a commission.
Okay. Let's talk about workforce Pell Grants for a second. I mean, we can't keep doing what we're doing. The average starting salary for graduates from our community colleges and technical colleges back home is higher than our four-year universities, and their debt is close to zero, if not zero as well. What would you speak to what do you feel about more flexibility of Pell Grants?
Well, I certainly would like to see workforce Pell Grants, and it goes through various stages of getting passed, but I definitely think that workforce Pell Grants are something that could stimulate our economy, provide opportunity for those who want to participate in skilled-based learning, to have the opportunity if we'd have short-term certificates of Pell Grants that would get those students into the workplace faster if they want to be electricians, HVAC developers.
And apprenticeships as well?
And apprenticeships and internships, all of that. Well. In fact, in the first Trump administration, I was part of, with SBA and working with the Department of Labor, of making sure that there were more apprenticeship programs across the country, because those are very, very vital to the growth of not only our economy, but our businesses in general.
Thank you, Ms. McMahon. I appreciate your answers and look forward to supporting you. Again, education is so important to all of us. To live that American dream, we need a strong education system. I know you're committed to that as well. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Marshall.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Mr. Bisognano. Welcome. We appreciate you answering the call that this is a job you don't need. This is a job that you don't covet, but instead you're one of the patriots that's stepping forward to help save this nation. We heard some fear-mongering this morning, and I just want to reassure Americans that Republicans are the party that wants to save Social Security, that we want to ensure that the folks that have paid into Social Security their whole lives, who've earned these benefits, get the money that they were promised. And I also want to remind Americans that we're the party that wants to stop the taxing of Social Security benefits as well. We want Americans to keep more of their hard-earned money and not have to pay a tax on this benefit that they've paid into their whole lives. The Social Security Administration had probably $10 billion of improper payments in 2023. I think it's a lot more than that. Can you explain how you use your past experience in payments processing to bring down these improper payments?
I think my past experience is beyond payment processing, but I think in this case it's good to talk about in a broader sense. I think every error requires root cause analysis. Why did it happen? There are no one-offs. My lifetime of experience shows there's pattern recognition. And the fact that we produce an Inspector General report that talks about a 1% error rate, that is completely too high for the function we're talking about.
In your past experience, what was your error rate?
5 decimals to the right, 5 decimal points to the right, so point at 0.0000.
Got it.
1, and
Okay.
that's what the target would be. So I think and if you think about that type of error rate running through the agency, it creates the opportunity for more problems than we need. Ultimately, we're talking about quality of service to our beneficiaries. So I think it's about root cause analysis. I think it's about rigor. I know that there's lots of stats that are produced, but when I go on and look at the stats, they're not at the level that you all should accept, or that I will accept, or that the American public
Certainly
should
one way
accept.
of saving Social Security is by eliminating or decreasing these improper payments. I don't think anyone could argue against that. Let's talk about customer experience a little bit more. How you use your background to improve processing times and customer service.
I think many of this is about what I call process engineering, understanding where we are creating backlogs, obviously with the amount of time it's taking. I don't know if our standards are appropriate yet. We have a 6-month standard on disability. It takes much longer. A lot of things we need to go analyze them, but I don't believe that this is going to take us years. I think there's many things we'll solve in year 1. And that would be my expectation. You know, I bring a sense of urgency to, and I want the people in the agency to feel like they're winning. I want them to feel like they're winning.
Let's talk about Americans' personally identifiable information. All of us, from credit cards to banks. I mean, even this week, I got another alert from health insurance that our data has been violated. What's your experience been like in the private world to protect people's identifiable information, and how can you improve and protect that? Let me ask you, is this a priority for you?
It's job one. You know, in this job, it's job one. And if you run a financial institution, it's job one. And if you run Fiserv, it's job one. You know, you must have the trust, and that's something PII, as you would call it, needs the highest level of scrutiny and protection. And we need to understand who can access what information and ensure that that information is anonymized, so they're not getting data that they could use in a bad way.
My last question, let's talk about the IT systems that you've used in the past. What can you do from an IT standpoint to improve Social Security's efficiency and improve customer experience?
Well, I think technology is a great enabler. You don't have to throw a system out. You have to figure out how to make it work better. You have to understand how to make yourself more efficient. I think, you know, one of the greatest efficiency opportunities we have is using artificial intelligence. That doesn't mean we use it for answering the phone. It means we use it to learn how to do our work better. And I don't think these are monumental economic spends. I think we could do them within the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Bisognano. You're hired. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome everybody as well. Certainly, there's no doubt that 70% of Jewish students feel harassed. They feel threatened. And unfortunately, I found that in my home state. At the University of Kansas, I went and sat down and visited with the Jewish students there. And when these riots and protests were going on, to Senator Collins' point, the leaders of the riots were actually teachers there and graduate students and outsiders, showing them how to do this type of rioting. The students were being followed into their classrooms. The protesters, the class, maybe it was a class in Jewish history, and the protesters were inside the buildings, outside the class, harassing these students. And certainly this is all very, very unacceptable. And I'm glad that we're proceeding this. I think there's a great opportunity for some type of an anti-Semitic commission going forward. This problem was happening 2,000 years ago. It's going to keep happening, and we need to keep this in mind as well. I want to go to Dr. Small first. Dr. Small, what was Qatar's role in the hostage release of Americans?
It's a good question. I'm not an expert at that level, but I know that the Qataris certainly were funding Hamas. They have very good relations.
Okay, that's not my question. I'll answer the question for you. Sure. So the Qataris were vastly responsible for the freeing of American hostages and many others. Dr. Small, what was Qatar's role in the evacuation of Afghanistan, and especially how did it impact America?
The Qatari regime has good relations with the Taliban, with the Iranian Revolutionary Regime. And
it's interesting,
Hamas.
Just the prejudice that I hear coming out of your mouth here, that Qatar was so important. Now, the 120,000 people evacuated from Afghanistan in our moment of need, Qatar stood beside us, and of the 120,000 removed, 60,000 of them came through Qatar. Without Qatar, we would have had thousands more deaths as well. So I don't know why you won't answer that question. I want to think about just a little bit more objective here. I'm going to say this century, in the past decade or so, Qatar has given about $5 billion to the educational institutions of America. And a vast majority of that, probably 80%, is setting up universities in Qatar. Whether it's Texas A&M in engineering, Cornell in medicine, a vast amount of that money is research-oriented as well. Qatar's been a great ally to America, so I don't know why you're attacking them. And then why don't you compare? So China's given over $3 billion, the Saudis $1.5 billion, UK $1 billion, Germany over $1 billion. So why aren't we attacking them as well? And I want you to answer this question. 2 universities, heavily funded by Qatar, were Carnegie Mellon and VCU. Were there any large anti-Semitic riots or protests there?
So look, this is a very important issue, and I would say.
So were there any anti-Semitic riots or protests in VCU or Carnegie Mellon? The answer is no. So the answer is no. So they were vastly funded, but yet there was no riots there. So I don't understand why you're picking on the Qataris here when other people are funding. Take Texas and Texas A&M. Texas A&M has a university presence in Qatar. University of Texas doesn't. So you would make the conclusion that Texas A&M was funded, but UT is where the riots were. UT had nothing to do with Qatari funding there. I don't know how causation doesn't, what's my saying here that Senator Cass uses all the time here?
What is association is not necessarily causation.
There you go. Association is not causation. So I don't know why we're here fueling the fire. Not all Muslims are anti-Semitic. Not all Muslims are anti-American. And here we have a Muslim country that has stood beside America for the most part, and they're not perfect. They're not perfect, but they help us get back hostages. They saved the day in Afghanistan. In so many ways, they've stood beside us. I think you're picking on them. I think you're coming to conclusions that are not well-founded. I think that that's called discrimination. I think it's prejudiced as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
May I respond, please? May I answer the
In
question?
26 seconds.
Pardon me?
Oh,
Well, I would just say that Qatar is a country with less than 350,000 citizens. They give more money to American universities than any country in the world. The greatest victims of political radical Islam are Muslims.
But you're missing the rest of the story, though. See, here, this just continues the prejudice that you have. You don't mention China, you don't mention Saudi, you don't mention the UK. They all have significant donations as well. Look, nobody is perfect. And I know that you built your life on this one thing. But no country is perfect, and I'm as pro-Israel as any member is up here. I'm certainly recognize the anti-Semitism that's been around for over 2,000 years. I don't know why you want to use an anti-Semitic term. I don't know why you want to make Qatar the scapegoat here.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Marshall. Senator Baldwin. I assume I don't have your list over here. Are you next?
I was not here at the gavel.
Oh, good. Then Senator Hassan.
Hate to admit that.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
The Senate Minority Leader.
Mr. President, earlier today, the Defense Department announced the U.S. has formally accepted a luxury 747 jetliner as a gift from Qatar to be used as Air Force One. It's the largest foreign gift to an American president in modern history. One Donald Trump says will go to his presidential library after his term. This gift is outrageous. Donald Trump will berate companies to, quote, eat his tariffs and tell parents to pay yet more for groceries, but is accepting a luxury plane he can use as Air Force One. This gift screams national security risk. It is bribery in broad daylight. Donald Trump is thumbing his nose at Republicans and practically daring them to stop him. Well, today, the Senate can. In a few moments, I will move for swift passage of the Presidential Airlift Security Act, prohibiting the use of any foreign plane to be utilized as Air Force One. Specifically, my legislation would prohibit even a single taxpayer dollar from being used by the Department of Defense to procure, modify, retrofit, or maintain any foreign aircraft for the purposes of transporting a U.S. president. This is about ensuring our national security and about not wasting taxpayer dollars on an utterly senseless deal. It should not take an act of Congress to stop the President of the United States from accepting the largest foreign bribe in modern history. But apparently, Donald Trump is perfectly willing to sell out the American people and the presidency to fill his own pockets. Senate Republicans who say they're troubled by the idea of using a foreign plane as Air Force One should join me in supporting this very common sense bill. Donald Trump accepting this gift reeks of corruption and naked self-enrichment, and Republicans should stand up and support my bill, defend national security, and protect Americans. And so, I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Armed Services be discharged from further consideration of S. 1804, and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration, that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there an objection?
Mr. President,
Senator from Kansas.
I object.
The objection.
Colleagues, the ugly truth about this so-called big, beautiful bill is that it will kick 17 million Americans off their health care. This bill cuts almost $1 trillion from Medicaid and other health care programs by tying people up in red tape. Republicans will tell you they're trying to improve Medicaid, but the truth is they're not. It is cruel and dishonest to bury parents, kids, and seniors in paperwork and then blame them when they lose their health care, all to further rig our tax code for the very wealthiest. This week, I met with 30 nurses from Delaware. Their patients couldn't come to D.C., so they did. They care for seniors and newborns, families, and the disabled. And their ask to us, don't take health care away from tens of thousands of Delawareans and millions of Americans. Colleagues, support this Coons amendment to eliminate cruel and unnecessary red tape and allow Americans to keep the health care they need and deserve.
Mr. President,
I recognize the senator from Kansas.
as I look at this, the senator's motion is on work requirements. You know, back home we had a saying for people that had an aversion to work. We called it an allergy to work. But my question is, don't you think a job brings value, that it brings dignity? Do you not think that a job brings purpose and meaning to life? We have 7 million healthy American men across this country, working age, that aren't working right now. So yes, we want to encourage people to go back to work, but our bill, as you point out, actually preserves and protects it for those groups. Our bill makes this stronger, financially stronger, so that we can protect it and strengthen it for seniors in nursing homes, for people with disabilities, for pregnant women, and for children. Let's protect Medicaid for those who need it the most. I urge a no vote on this, and I'll never apologize for encouraging people to go to work.
The question occurs on the motion.
The clerk will report.
Senator from Oregon, Mr. Wyden, moves to commit the bill H.R. 1 to the Committee on Finance with instructions to report back forthwith.
Mr. President, I ask that further reading of the motion be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Mr. President, this is a motion supported by all finance Democrats to send the bill back to the Finance Committee to strike all the Medicaid cuts and ensure that big corporations and the ultra-wealthy pay their fair share in taxes. It is now clear that there is bipartisan opposition in the Senate to the Medicaid cuts in this bill. That's because it's the biggest Medicaid cut in history and represents the largest transfer of wealth in history. It is caviar over kids, hedge funds over health care, Mar-a-Lago over the middle class. These Medicaid cuts are going to reach down into every corner of our nation's health care system. As we've heard from rural America, rural hospitals will close their doors. Seniors are going to lose care at home and be left with fewer nursing homes and fewer nurses. Kids with disabilities will lose health care. We saw them on the steps of the Capitol last night. Never have I seen legislation
Senator's time's expired.
focused on denying health care to eligible Americans.
Senator's time is
an
expired.
Opportunity to take these awful Medicaid cuts off the table and find another way forward. I yield back.
Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from Kansas.
Mr. President, good morning. It's great to be here. I just want to share with America the great work that Republicans have done on Medicaid, that we're preserving it, we're protecting it, we're strengthening it for those who need it the most. We're going to make sure that your seniors in nursing homes, that pregnant women, that children, that people on disabilities have Medicaid in the future. We are fiscally making Medicaid more sound. You know, it's only in Washington, D.C. that you increase spending at a rate faster than inflation, and you call it a cut. So we're increasing spending on this legislation. We're increasing funding for Medicaid. We are preserving and protecting it for those who need it the most. I urge everyone to vote no on this amendment. Thank you. Are you?
Thank you. Senator Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to our witnesses and welcome. Thank you for agreeing to be considered for this job, and we wish you both the very, very best. Maybe we'll start with Mr. Greenstein. Will you, in the One Big Beautiful Bill, there's some tax credits that could really help several different groups get our economy going. Will you be involved at all in writing any of those rules?
Senator Marshall, thank you very much for that question. Also, thank you again for the time. It was great to meet last month. I share your and your constituents' focus. Unfortunately, I will not be involved in that aspect.
Who at Treasury does write those rules?
I would refer you to the Office of Tax Policy.
Okay. All right, thanks. The 45Z is really important to our farmers, and we need to get that one rolling. So it's going to allow us to turn corn into jet fuel, something great for the economy as well as ecology as well. Then I'll turn to Mr. Korb for a second as well. Mr. Korb, are you familiar? And forgive me, some people have asked this question already, but are you familiar with Revenue Ruling 2024-14? It addresses challenges specific partnership-related basis shifting transactions. Are you familiar with it?
Thank you for that question. Again, I'd like to thank you for the nice meeting we had in your office. I really appreciate that. And it has been asked already here, and I am aware of it. I understand. I've studied. That's one area I knew that would come up in the hearing, so I have studied that.
Okay.
And I plan to work with the tax policy folks at Treasury to work through the issues. Okay.
Would you agree with me that it blew past the limits of the economic substance doctrine, that it's fostered confusion and uncertainty for law-abiding taxpayers, and most importantly, that it's created a weapon for selective enforcement by the Biden administration?
Well, it is interesting how the Biden administration focused on the economic substance doctrine that was enshrined in the code after I was chief counsel. My focus during my time was to use the judicial doctrine. And as I understand it, that is still viable. So I don't understand, to be honest, since I don't have any of these cases, I don't understand exactly how they're using it. But I certainly want to find out and work through that issue.
Can you speak to how the Biden administration weaponized this against certain groups?
Well, I think what they did, yes, they decided that, as near as I can tell, to go after certain partnerships. And the audit program that they developed did target specific partnership, no question about it.
Okay. Will you commit to rescinding this ruling and restore fairness and predictability to tax enforcement?
Well, what I will commit to do is working with the tax policy folks at Treasury, getting fully briefed on this and helping them reach a decision on what to do next. I will obviously commit to that.
Can you kind of outline what those steps look like in a little bit more specifically, and then how can you communicate to Congress those steps?
Well, the way the process works, at least it did the last couple times I've been at the IRS, is the Office of Chief Counsel has about 600 lawyers in the national office who work with the 40 or 50 lawyers in the Office of Tax Policy at Treasury to develop the rules. It goes through a very rigorous process, a lot of review, a lot of back and forth. I think I mentioned to you, I've known the Assistant Secretary for Tax Policy, Ken Keyes, for over 40 years. And we are looking forward to working together in government for the first time. And there will be no daylight between us, as sometimes happens between the two buildings, not in our case. And we will work through it logically. I really can't tell you what's going to happen because I'm not there. And I don't have all the facts, I'm relying on what you said, relying on what the media reports are. And so I really have to get in there and use my own judgment after I understand all of that.
Thank you. Mr. Greenstein, let's finish up with you. Just take a moment. If there's anything you wanted to clear up or didn't get a chance to finish any statements earlier today that you got cut off, we'll give you time to do that. Or otherwise, maybe just talk about the challenges and the opportunities in your new job.
Senator Marshall, thank you very much for that opportunity and that question. If confirmed, I just want to make very clear how excited I am to use the position to promote President Trump's America First agenda and the interests of American workers, American business in the international space, whether that's at the G7, the G20, through the IMF, or with the Financial Stability Board. Thank you, though.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It looks like I'm your last dance partner today. Thank you.
That's right, Senator Marshall. You get to do wrap-up. You got to do wrap-up, and now I will do the finish-up. That does conclude the questioning, and I want to again thank both of our nominees for being here today and your participation in this hearing. I also want to thank you for your willingness to step up and serve. Getting into public service these days is sometimes a little bit of a brutal process. And I appreciate the fact that you're willing to step up and help us in the respective positions that you've been nominated for to help do the right things for America. And just thank you for your willingness to serve. You're both very clearly qualified to serve in the positions to which you've been nominated.
We'll go next to Dr. Marshall, and then for the sake of the committee, after that, we'll take a 15-minute break to go vote, and then we will come back and continue. Dr. Marshall.
Dr. Moneras, despite the president's executive order, did you encourage people to work remotely ever?
I did not encourage people to work remotely.
Okay. There were allegations that you took some of the political appointees and you basically took them out of your orbit, out of your office area. Did you reassign office location, desk location for the political appointees?
So I do want to go back to your first question. After the shooting, I allowed staff to work remotely.
Okay, you can give us the details of that later. The second question, did you push political appointees out of your main office area, reassign the political appointees seating?
I brought some political appointees in. I had.
My question is, did you move some out?
So there's a limited number of offices in my.
Did you, I guess a yes or no, did you move political appointees out of your main orbit?
And I brought other political appointees in.
Okay, you can give us the details of that later. Do you believe every child over the age of 6 months should have a COVID vaccine at least annually?
I believe that is a discussion that a parent needs to have with their pediatrician. And if it is right for that child, based on the risk, then that child should have the opportunity to get the vaccine.
If there's reports come out that show that indeed the COVID vaccination led to the death of children, would that influence your advice?
Certainly would want to know about that.
Okay, the CDC currently recommends between 70 and 80 shots over the child's lifetime. Do you fully support that recommendation that every child needs every vaccine as recommended by the CDC?
The data associated with those recommendations has been validated and vetted. That is the current schedule.
So you agree that you support every child needs every vaccine that's on the CDC recommendations, all 70 to 80 jabs?
The childhood vaccine schedule has been vetted and validated through science and evidence. The almost 20 different diseases that are mitigated through those vaccines are very important. I think that every parent should have the opportunity to talk to their pediatrician and make sure that they understand the benefits and the risks of those vaccines and what is in the best interest of their children.
Do you believe any or all of those should be mandated?
CDC does not mandate vaccines. What CDC does is provide the evidence associated with the recommendations so that a parent and a physician can make the best determination for them.
When you were considering this job as CDC director, was there ever any doubt in your mind that you could fulfill the mission to work with Secretary Kennedy?
There wasn't. I have worked for political appointees and politicians for almost 20 years. And my experience has been when it comes to critical and important issues like science and medicine, Data has always been paramount, and it has always been the core driver to how we work together.
Would you agree with me, though, at this point in time, that you're not the right person for this job, that your belief system, thinking that every child needs every vaccine, which is what your CDC does, every child needs every vaccine, all 70 to 80 of them, is certainly a different mindset than Secretary Kennedy's. And that if the university president, I think a great sports analogy, I hate to do this, but the university president and the athletic director decide you're not the right coach for this team, then it's probably time to say goodbye and we need a new coach. Would you agree that certainly you're going in a different direction philosophically than Secretary Kennedy is?
So I will stand behind scientific integrity with every decision I ever make. If I am put in a position of having to say, I will cede the scientific integrity to retain my job, then I am not the right person for the position. I believe that we must have science and evidence to support the best decisions for our children and others who would benefit from vaccines.
So I think here's the biggest difference in philosophy that I see, is that I think the CDC is the cause of vaccine hesitancy, that you are the problem, that because of COVID and you're forcing these vaccines on people that weren't ever really proven or justified, that the benefits didn't outweigh the risk, and you all sat there with your hands in your pockets and you let that happen. And then you let this hepatitis vaccine be at 1 day of age, be forced upon everybody. And all of a sudden, the moms and the grandmas never trust you because you're trying to force a vaccine that's not necessary at day one. If you're going into nursing school, medical school, absolutely, you should consider that hepatitis vaccine. But basically what the CDC does is act like a mandate. And you force doctors that don't agree with you to kick patients out of their clinics because they don't want their child to be exposed to a vaccine that was approved after just like 140 patients took it, being followed up for 5 days. It just makes no sense to me that every person needs every vaccine. But regardless, some of the vaccines have done incredible work. They are a miracle. They've done a great job. The basic vaccines that we got in the 60s and 70s, polio, MMR, DTaP, those seem to be great vaccines that have told the test of time. But your attitude here that every person needs every vaccine is completely contrary to Secretary Kennedy's philosophy and the mission of the president. Thank you.
So, as announced earlier, we will stand.
I don't have to tell anybody in this room that this is day 39 of a Democrat shutdown. Day 39. You know, a real common question I get is, who's winning? Are the Republicans winning? Are the Democrats winning? Mr. President, I would tell you no one wins when there's a government shutdown, and especially when it goes on this long, and it's certainly not the American people. My heart goes out with empathy to those folks that have not received a paycheck since October the 1st. Hardworking Americans, you know, I especially feel for our TSA workers, our air traffic control workers, all those people that are out there keeping us safe, our Capitol Police, all these folks that are involved in the safety, the day-to-day safety of Americans. Thank you for continuing to work without being paid. It's interesting to me to understand why the Democrats have shut the government down. And you can blame whoever you want to, but I think it's an 80-20 issue that Americans don't think it's right to shut down the government, holding everybody hostage over these Biden-Obamacare bonuses. $35 billion a year, that's what they're holding the government up over. These $35 billion a year is these enhanced Biden-Obamacare bonuses. That's 0.5% of the federal budget that we're keeping everything else under wraps for. $35 billion that's being given, by the way, to insurance companies. Another subsidy to insurance companies. Overall, Obamacare actually cost the federal government closer to $150 billion a year. That's right, we're spending about $150 billion of your tax-earned dollars supplementing other people's health care. It was interesting when they sold this to the American people, they said it would cost $40 or $50 billion, but we're already triple of that. That's what the American taxpayers are paying. That's $400 million a day. That's right, we're giving insurance companies $400 million a day of stipends from the ACA, from Obamacare, taxpayer money, $40 million a day. If you look at this Obamacare overall, by the way, there's about $25 billion of fraud, and we're going to get into that in a second. And again, there's $35 billion of these Biden-Obamacare bonuses, and overall it's a $150 billion a year project. These dollars are funneled straight into the coffers of big insurance cartels through Obamacare subsidies. All the while, they deny claims. Think about what insurance companies are doing today. Through prior authorization and other issues, they're able to deny claims, to jack up costs for everyday families, sending many into bankruptcy. All the while, they're boosting their profits, driving up their stock value. Now, what do you mean, driving up stock values? You know, there's driving up stocks and there's driving up stocks. And I think we take a look at this one chart here, and I believe that President Trump put this on Truth Social today as well. United, this is since Obamacare was enacted. United Healthcare Group is now up almost 1,200%. This is their stock price, 1,200%. Cigna's at 800%. I know you're feeling sorry for Humana at only 500%. Molina here at 859% as well. So certainly we understand that these insurance companies have profited from these direct subsidies from Obamacare going into their bank accounts. But what's important is these subsidies aren't really helping the little guy. It's corporate welfare on steroids that boost the profits of giants like United Healthcare, which pocketed over $14 billion in earnings last year alone, laughing all the way to the bank on the backs of struggling taxpayers. $14 billion in earnings. Don't feel sorry for them that they're not going to get this $35 billion a year subsidy. The big winner of Obamacare has always been and will always be large health insurance companies. They and the lobbyists who helped write Obamacare. I want to remind everyone, though, that the ACA ended up being not so affordable as well. Premiums are up over 200%, sometimes 400% since its conception. And we're expecting another spike of 25% increase in premiums. Regardless what Congress does or doesn't do with Obamacare, the premiums are going to go up 25%. And for the most part, the government stands to pay for that entire increase. The way Obamacare is set up, you pay a percentage of your income. So if the insurance rates, if the premiums go up 10%, 20%, 100%, the government is going to subsidize and take care of all that increase. And that's one reason why the insurance companies wrote Obamacare this way. There's basically no recourse. They know whatever they make the premium, that the government's going to pay it. That's why it's not working. And what else? Obamacare, like Medicaid, is not meaningful health care. With an average deductible of $5,000, that's not meaningful access to health care. Obamacare is an abstract failure. It's expensive, it doesn't work, it doesn't give you access. I think everything I've said so far is undeniable, it's unarguable, it's factual. But I want to turn now is to think about goals. Goals that Republicans, Democrats, Americans would have when it comes to health care. Republicans want every American to have meaningful, affordable access to health care. And a $5,000 deductible for people at 200 or 300% of poverty level, frankly, does not give you meaningful access to health care. I want to turn to talk about fraud just a little bit more. Get this. 35 to 40% of Obamacare recipients that are enrolled in Obamacare never file a claim. Let me say that again. There's 24 million people on Obamacare. 35, 40% of those people never file a claim. These are ghost people. They don't even know they're on Obamacare. They've been falsely enrolled in Obamacare. Now, some people would say, "Oh, but there's always some people that don't file a claim." It's usually more like 10%. More like 10% of people in a pool of insurance products are not filing the claim. In this case, it's 35 to 40%. And overall, I think we could say that this group of people in Obamacare is a high-risk group. Big cities like Chicago have pushed people that took early retirement, have pushed them onto Obamacare. These are typically sick people that have been pushed off other plans and they went towards Obamacare. And trust me, I want to address that. That's why we need a high-risk pool that would address those types of folks as well. But the point here is that some 10 million people on Obamacare are not using it, but the federal government is getting the entire premium paid. The insurance companies are getting the entire premium paid by the federal government. So 10 million people, a premium every month. It's like a slot machine going to big insurance companies. So what's the solution? Instead of giving money to insurance companies, let's give it to the American people. Let me say that again. Instead of giving money to the insurance companies, let's give it to hard-working Americans. What a novel idea. Let's turn patients into consumers once again by funding some type of a HSA or a flexible spending account. Call it what you want to. But instead of giving the insurance companies dollars, these premium dollars, let's give that money to hardworking Americans. I did miss one point I wanted to make when it comes to fraud, Mr. President. In addition to address those people that are not that are ghosts, there's ways to fix that, real simple ones. Number one is to have some type of meaningful ID. Right now, basically, you could give an insurance peddler out there just your name and your birth date, and they can enroll you. They need to go through the same type of regimen that it would take, say, to enroll for Medicare. There's biometrics that we can use as well. But in addition to that, all we would have to do is have a monthly payment. And I understand, it doesn't have to be a lot. You're at 150% of poverty level, you don't have a lot of money. But if there's a there's a $20 payment coming out of your Apple Pay card once a month, you would see that every month. And if you didn't know you were enrolled in something, it would force you to call this company and say, hey, I didn't sign up for this. And we need the highest enforcement levels when people are frauding the federal government like this as well. So let me return now to our flexible spending accounts, our HSAs. Right now, there's about $12 billion every year we're spending on cost share reductions. CSRs, as they're called up here. So we're spending about $12 billion a year on these cost sharing reductions. In addition to that, there's another $35 billion we've been spending on these Obamacare enhanced bonuses, if you will. So our belief is we took both those fundings, the 12 and the $35 billion, and put it into on an HSA card, no different than we do with food stamps or all the other federal programs, and use that money then for your out-of-pocket expenses. Couldn't use it on premiums. That would not make any sense. You would use it for your out-of-pockets, your deductibles, your co-pays. And that would allow you to purchase, just start driving insurance premiums down by picking a product that you know that you have some money in your own bank account, so to speak, to take care of those out-of-pocket expenses. So eventually, as this group of people become consumers again, and they become a better consumer out there, comparing the price of one hospital to another, or a surgery center to a hospital, or a doctor's office versus another doctor's office, making those choices themselves, they're going to drive the cost of health care down. And I want to remind everybody, we wouldn't touch the original subsidies. So the original ACA subsidies, again, this is pre-Joe Biden, those would remain in place. So don't feel sorry. The insurance companies are still going to get $100 billion a year of these subsidies from the original ACA plan. We're just taking these new enhanced subsidies, these Biden bonus money and the CSR money, and putting those into some type of a HSA account. There's lots of other things we could do as well, Mr. President, to help drive the true cost of health care down. We've talked a lot about a price tags bill, letting patients become consumers and letting them shop, so forcing hospitals and surgery centers and imaging centers and all other health care providers to provide a price tag along with some type of quality outcomes as well. We need to end silver loading. We need to expand options. I hope that we could let people choose association healthcare plans or ministry plans as well. There's many, many things we could do to impact the cost of prescription drugs for this group of people as well. I'll start winding it down here and just say, enough with the lies. The so-called affordable care The big insurance company cartels have formed a monopoly that control premiums, with the federal government acting as their personal ATM, dishing out billions in enhanced subsidies that only inflate their executive bonuses and shareholder dividends while leaving millions without meaningful access to health care. It's time we demand an end to this rigged system where insurance BMS rake in tens of billions of dollars in revenue, yet rely on some $150 billion in yearly government handouts under the ACA, turning public health into a private profit machine at our expense. Our carrot and stick approach uses federally funded FSAs, HSAs to encourage mindful spending and reward efficient users by converting a portion of their savings into a retirement account eventually. All of this fosters consumerism. If you think about the ACA, we're spending $6,500 a year of federal dollars per each patient, $6,500 per year per patient. We're not spending any more than that on Medicaid. And then the states are putting their money on top. We might as well move these patients into Medicaid as continuing to subsidize these insurance companies. It makes no sense to anybody up here, but yet we continue to throw good money after bad money. In this case, we're keeping the federal government closed because of this insane program. And maybe it's just pride. Maybe it's just pride of my friends across the aisle that they won't admit that the ACA, the Unaffordable Care Act, Obamacare, was a failure. It destroys competition, it destroys consumerism. Overregulation always leads to consolidation of industry. We've seen it with insurance companies, with hospitals. We're seeing it now with doctors' practices even. It's going to be hard to fix this overnight. This has been the law of the land for 15 years. But everything where we are today, the reason that rural hospitals are going broke, the reason that we have $5,000 deductibles, the reason that premiums are going up 25%, it's because of the Obamacare rules. Again, the insurance companies wrote Obamacare. Their lobbyists, big hospital systems, they're the ones that wrote Obamacare. And here we are. They've been on the gravy train now for over a decade. $150 billion a year for these 24 million people. Mr. President, I want to open the government. I want to open the government, but I can't be forced to throw good money after bad money. So many of us want to fix health care. That's why I came here. Fixing health care, it won't be easy. It's 18% of our GDP. But there are fixes out there. It'll take a bipartisan effort. It's going to take months and not weeks and not days to fix it. And all I can do is, I've outlined a plan here. If my friends across the aisle would embrace just two simple concepts of dealing with fraud, and instead of giving money to big insurance companies, that we give it to hardworking Americans. I think that's the framing two pieces of a very good health care package, a very good bipartisan health care package. So I'm asking you to come across the aisle, to shake our hands, say, yes, let's get to work on that. But in the meanwhile, we need to get government opened. Thank you, Mr. President.